Previous reports suggested that Triple H and Stephanie McMahon were opposed to a sale of World Wrestling Entertainment. However, new reports suggest that may not be the case. We've got the very latest details on that. Disney and Comcast are two names that have been widely linked to purchase WWE. However, would they have a role for Vince McMahon if indeed they did take over the company? The tag team championships in WWE look to be split up as number one contenders for the Raw tag team titles have been crowned, as well as a tournament beginning to crown number one contenders for the SmackDown tag team championships. Johnny Gargano announced he had suffered an injury this past week, but is it legitimate? And finally, a North American Championship match has been announced for Vengeance Day. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of World Wrestling Entertainment. So let's start off talking about takeovers. Let's start off talking about the sale of WWE. Let's talk about the drama that's involving Vince McMahon, Stephanie McMahon, who of course resigned from the company, Triple H, her husband, the chief content officer of the company, the head of creative right now, again, for now. Now, there was a report previously suggesting that they were opposed to a sale of WWE prior to Vince McMahon's return last week. However, new reporting suggests that those reports indicating that the married couple were opposed to a sale of World Wrestling Entertainment may be quite far wide of the mark. An update has emerged on previous reports that Stephanie McMahon and Triple H are opposed to a sale of WWE. Shortly after Vince McMahon rejoined the WWE Board of Directors at the beginning of the year, former chairwoman and co-CEO Stephanie McMahon shared a statement announcing her resignation on January 10th. WWE is reportedly receiving advice about a potential sale of the company. In a recent article, which we did cover here on the channel, Axios.com reported that Stephanie and her husband, Chief Content Officer Triple H, didn't want WWE sold. This is what Axios wrote, quote, sources told Axios that Stephanie McMahon and her husband, Paul Triple H Levesque, the company's chief content officer and retired professional wrestler, had opposed a sale, end quote. Well, on Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer provided further clarification on the situation, noting, quotes, one of them, the various stories about a WWE sale, was they were opposed to a sale. From what I am told, Paul and Stephanie, they are not opposed to a sale, and they knew that some of those Vince's shares, he is the majority shareholder of the B-class stock, were an albatross, and at some point somebody had to get rid of those shares anyway, or Vince would take over. So they were not like saying we have to sell. It's Vince who pretty much made that call because of the timing, and maybe again he's farther along the Saudi deal, which is maybe where those rumors came from, and knew the timing and everything like that because he jumped in for the sale. Anyways, it's not like they are opposed to a sale. It's not like they are championing the sale either. They were either way about it. So basically saying that Stephanie McMahon and Paul Levesque would oppose to a sale, but they weren't gung-ho for a sale like Vince McMahon was either. There is some speculation, some rumors that, again, Vince McMahon did have meetings with the Saudi Public Investment Fund or representatives of the Saudi PIF prior to his return to WWE at the beginning of the year, leading to some to speculate that's where the initial rumors that the company had been sold to the Saudi PIF, that's where that had come from, because Vince had spoken to representatives of it previously. And again, they might have first dibs on it, but at the same time, there are other reports, other rumors suggesting that they're not the front runners, and front runners so far are the likes of Comcast, Disney, and others. And also, of course, the Khan family, the owners of All Elite Wrestling, are also considering putting an offer on the table to WWE. Whether or not it would be enough for what they're looking for, whether or not WWE would even consider selling to a rival is probably quite far-fetched, but certainly this year has proven that anything is possible. Now, Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful has indicated that much of the Axios.com article was inaccurate, tweeting, quote, there was a whole lot in the Axios report that was flat out wrong. So basically saying that reporting was wide of the mark. And it's quite interesting because Axios, in terms of a publication, is very reputable, certainly in terms of their coverage of politics and other aspects of general world news. They're very well sourced and they're very well reported. However, sometimes, and this is the fine line between pro wrestling reporting and mainstream journalism, is that sometime when mainstream media outlets try to get involved and understand pro wrestling, because there isn't a general week-to-week interest, they kind of try to fill in the blanks. They don't know certain aspects of what's going on, and they still, even in 2023, they still get confused between what is fact and what is fiction in terms of what they see on the television and what they hear about in real life and how to differentiate the two. So Sometimes when it comes to mainstream media reporting on pro wrestling, they can be wide of the mark, but that isn't to absolve wrestling media either, because wrestling media, as we know, can also be very wide of the mark. As is the case, though, when it comes to this whole takeover business and this whole sale talk and the whole Vince McMahon scandal and drama and all of the stuff that surrounds it, I would lean into more the reporting from mainstream media articles, particularly financial outlets like the Wall Street Journal, like Barron's, like the Financial Times. The Wall Street Journal in particular, they've been the one really to break open and crack open this entire Vince McMahon story from beginning to where we are right now. Whether it's the first allegations made against him, whether it's his retirement, whether it's his return, whether it's the back and forth between the board of directors and him prior to his return to the company, they've been the ones to really knock everything out of the park and again break open that story. And their sister publication, Barron's, was the first to report that the Khan family was also interested in World Wrestling Entertainment. So when they report, we should listen, but at the same time, we have to be aware that once they start talking about sort of internal stuff in terms of relationships between people, they are just as reputable, I guess, as anyone else. But it certainly is interesting to note that, again, the big story was, Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, they didn't want WWE to be sold. That's why Stephanie left. And that's not necessarily totally accurate. They weren't for it. They weren't against it, because ultimately they realized it's Vince McMahon's call, irrespective of whether he's in the company or not. Now, speaking of this sale, again, the two front runners that people are talking about is Comcast and Disney, among several others. And a lot of people have suggested, me included, that this whole sale of WWE could be a means to an end for Vince McMahon to further get back into a place where he's fully in control of the company. Of course, after his retirement back in July, he was no longer the CEO, he was no longer the chairman, he was no longer the head of creative. Now that he's back on the board of directors, he's been elected as the chairman of the board once more, but he's not the CEO, that is Nick Khan, and he's not the head of creative, that is Triple H. However, some are speculating that one caveat to him selling the company to whoever he decides to sell it to could be that, hey, I'm willing to sell the company for this amount, but at the same time, the one condition I have is that I still run all of this on a day-to-day basis. You put me in charge and you put in the level of authority that I had previously. Now, a pushback to that has been, rightfully so, that several big multi-billion-dollar organizations like Comcast, like Disney, would not be willing necessarily to work with someone that's got various sexual misconduct allegations levied against them, in addition to several ongoing investigations into them as well. Now, it's been 1 week since Vince McMahon made his surprise return to WWE, and in that time, a whole lot has happened. From a unanimous vote of the board of directors electing him as executive chairman of the board, to his daughter, Stephanie McMahon, resigning as co-CEO and from the company altogether. The industry has hardly had a moment to collect its breath, certainly. Through it all, though, rampant rumours of a WWE sale persist, from the Saudi Public Investment Fund to AEW owners Tony and Shahid Khan, not to mention the likes of Comcast and Disney, plenty of potential buyers have surfaced over the past week or so. But if, to say, Comcast or Disney were to purchase WWE, would either of them be willing to keep Vince on board? Well, Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful has emerged with further details on that front. Reporting on behalf of contacts within each company, Fightful notes that while both companies have employees that have undoubtedly heard about these sale rumours, it's said to be hard to believe that any major company right now would want to retain Vince's services in any capacity in the event of a sale. That is, if they could help it to begin with. Of course, that may be easier said than done. A WWE sale may well be imminent, but at the very least, the recently installed executive chairman of the board has made his intentions clear since returning. If anything is going to happen with WWE, it's going to be Vince McMahon who will likely want it to happen whilst in a position of power. So basically, the situation is that while companies may not want to do business with Vince McMahon, he might force them in the same way that he forced his return to the company, in the same way that he held his own company hostage and hijacked it, essentially, did a hostile takeover. He could force potential bidders, look, I'm only going to accept your offer if you say that I'm in charge on a day-to-day basis. And there are plenty of other companies that are willing to front the cash to purchase WWE. It's a valuable asset right now. Its price is increasing. And in a day and age where you need content, not only do we provide content every single week, multiple hours of it, we've got this huge back catalog. We've got this huge library of content from our history, from ECW, WCW, all of the territory's history. We own it all pretty much. So because of that, I'm telling you that this would be a fantastic purchase for yourself, but I'm not going to sell it to you unless I'm in charge. And maybe, again, it's a means to an end. And maybe in these meetings he's already allegedly had with Saudi officials, maybe that's part of it. I'm happy to sell it to you, but at the same time, I'm in charge, right? You understand that I'm in charge. And they would agree to it. But again, there are other ramifications that even come with that. So whether or not they would keep Vince McMahon on, I think is a really interesting point. You can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. The tag team titles. Yes, whilst Roman Reigns is the undisputed WWE Universal Champion, of course, the Usos are also the undisputed WWE Tag Team Champions. Now, a few nights after crowning the Judgment Day as #1 contenders for the Raw Tag Team Championships, WWE announced a new tournament to crown top challengers for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. As such, it was again teased that WWE had plans to split up the undisputed WWE Tag Team Championships, currently held by the Usos, who unified the two titles with a victory over RK Bro in May of last year. The tournament itself kicks off next week on SmackDown with a first round match between the Banger Bros, Drew McIntyre and Sheamus, that name again, and the Viking Raiders. In a backstage segment with Adam Pearce, the Banger Bros initially demanded a match against the Raiders for attacking them after SmackDown went off the air last week. Pearce then revealed to the Banger Bros the details of the tournament and their first round opponents. A confident Sheamus brushed off the Raiders as serious threats, while promising fans a series of banger after banger after banger after banger in the upcoming tournament. Earlier on in the show, the Viking Raiders sent a message to the Banger Bros through a vignette telling McIntyre and Sheamus that suffering awaits them next week. WWE has yet to announce further details of the tournament or the other teams vying to become the #1 contenders to the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. Beside the Banger Bros versus the Viking Raiders, WWE has announced a contract signing segment between Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens for next week's show. WWE is also teasing a fallout from the backstage brawl that we covered earlier on last night on SmackDown between SmackDown Women's Champion Charlotte Flair and Sonya Deville during the broadcast. So seemingly the undisputed WWE Tag Team Championships are going to be no more, and that's good. You know, it's the first step, seemingly, of WWE just going, look, we need to keep things separate. My speculation, and it still is just speculation, there is no scoops here, was that Triple H was looking to do just a big reset after WrestleMania, and by that I mean hold a draft, keep those two rosters, I mean completely separate, have titles on their respective brands, and don't have the stars of either show mixing that much. And that was my sort of belief of why he brought so many people back and opened up the roster even more and brought up people from NXT too. And I still think that is the case. But to do that, you still have to have separate titles. Now, it's easier to do it for the tag team titles because, let's face it, the Usos, they can lose. And they may lose the tag team titles. At the same time, it's more difficult to do it with Roman Reigns because the guy hasn't been pinned since 2019. How they split up the titles, I still think they're trying to figure that out for WrestleMania later this year. At the same time, it had been widely speculated that the Usos were going to face off against Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn at WrestleMania for the undisputed WWE Tag Team Championship. So this still could be a red herring. This still could be something whereby WWE, as of right now, doesn't have any intention to split up the Tag Team Championships. That plan is to come after WrestleMania or something like that. I don't know. One thing we do know is Adam Pearce seemingly has had enough of the Usos, and we could be seeing a situation where the tag team titles are no longer undisputed. There are Raw Tag Team Champions. There are SmackDown Tag Team Champions. So we'll wait and see how that one plays out. Johnny Gargano, after returning to WWE, is now injured. For the last month and a half, fans have been wondering how serious Johnny Gargano's reported shoulder injury is and whether it's legitimate or just part of a build to a new storyline, such is the way, of course, in professional wrestling. But according to a new report from Fightful on Friday, Gargano's injury appears to be, quote, a legitimate one. The outlet also reported that the former NXT champion is aiming to return to WWE television by the Royal Rumble pay-per-view event later on this month. Gargano last wrestled on WWE television in late November, though he continued to appear on Raw in recent weeks, making several backstage appearances alongside his wife Candice LeRae and Dexter Lumis. He recently explained he sustained a shoulder injury late last month during a live event in Toronto. On this past Monday's episode, WWE announcer Kevin Patrick got more specific and said that Gargano had suffered a grade 2 AC sprain, which typically does not require surgery and takes up to a month to recover. Later on WWE's The Bump, Gargano explained explained that the injury occurred during his December 30 tag team match with Loomis against Baron Corbin and The Miz. He said, quote, "I got rammed into the steel steps and I sprained my AC joint," he said. "Doctors say originally about 5 to 6 weeks. I'm going to do everything in my power to cut that time down, and that's the most transparent I can be there. We're going to see what can happen, and I'm going to work very, very hard to come back as soon as possible." Now, I was thinking about Johnny Gargano as I was reading that and doing my prep for this show, and I just thought, I remember that report that said that Triple H and others were a bit underwhelmed by people's return to WWE. And to be honest, I think Gargano would fall into that category. Not that I don't like Johnny Gargano. I think he's a great wrestler and his run in NXT is legendary. But the character they've had him portray on Monday Night Raw, like this goofy, kind of comedic or bad dad joke babyface, it's just not been good. It's just not been good. And he got lumped into a storyline that was questionable anyway, with the whole Miz and Dexter Loomis and fake attacks for Hollywood fame or whatever, and he really has no business being in it. Not because, you know, the links there obviously with you know, his Dexter Loomis connections from NXT with the way, but it's just more, it just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel suited. So here's hoping when he comes back they've got something better for him. What that would be though, I don't know. I think maybe they're waiting for Ciampa to come back, and then it will be DIY on the main roster in the tag team division. Now, that is something I could get behind, and I think would be a lot of fun, particularly if they do split the tag titles back up again, which I think is the plan. But as of right now, it just feels like there isn't a lot of substance really for him to do, or he's not really doing all of that much. Finally, an NXT North American Championship match has been set for an upcoming big event for NXT. The date for Wesley's next NXT North American Championship defense has been revealed. During this week's special New Year's Evil episode of NXT, Dijak went one-on-one with Tony D'Angelo. Near the end of the match, Dijak handcuffed Channing Stacks Lorenzo of the D'Angelo family. Dijak was ready to deliver a big boot, but D'Angelo shoved Stacks out of the way and got nailed. This allowed Dijak to pick up the victory. After the match, Dijak had a stare down with Lee, who was watching the match from the announcer's desk. WWE made things official on its Twitter account yesterday, as it was announced that Lee will put his North American title on the line against Dijak at the Vengeance Day event on February 4th. The show will take place inside the Spectrum Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. Lee captured the North American Championship at Halloween Havoc back in October. The title had been vacated by Solo Sikoa, who'd won it after he was called up to the main roster. Lee later defeated Carmelo Hayes, Nathan Fraser, Von Wagner, and Oreo Mensah in the 5-man ladder match for the vacant gold. As for Dijak, he's been enjoying a newfound success since making his return to NXT. Dijak reappeared during the November 22nd episode of NXT. A feud with Lee had been brewing ever since that date because Dijak attacked Lee after he had his successful title defense against Hayes. Vengeance Day, of course, will be headlined by an NXT Championship match between title holder Bron Breakker and Grayson Waller after that bizarre finish on the New Year's Evil episode, which was not great in terms of a count-out finish and the rope breaking. No, enough of the rope breaking stuff. That's just enough of that. There you go. But there you go, guys. That's the latest WWE news for you. Be sure to smash the like and the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right hand corner. Let me know your thoughts on today's WWE news stories in the comment section below, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.